Good morning, YouTube. It's your buddy Choppadong. I am coming at you with a quick tip video today where we're going to discuss using the optimizer to build a player pool. This is something that a lot of people don't really know. We'll probably go into more detail with it with our VIPs down the road, but I wanted to at least give you a glance because I have forgotten about this concept up until this week, up until about last night when it hit me that I can't believe I didn't share this with people before. But we can use optimizers and projected points to also determine our player pool. Now, if you've tuned into me, senior content contributor, coach, whatever you want to call it, here at dfsarmy.com, you're going to find a box checker series of videos. You go back through and basically all of the quarterbacks, which ones check the most boxes, running backs, which ones check the most boxes. And we're going to start doing that again this week too, because by popular demand, a lot of people seem to like help narrowing down that player pool. But what we're going to do today is quickly show you how to use the Domination Station optimizer to start narrowing down that player pool as well. And we would just use the higher percentage plays off of the optimal lineup. I can go into FanDuel, click NFL. I can even do it on a showdown slate, on a single game slate if I want to. And what I would do is I would run 100 lineups. I would run a couple of unique players. I mean, run one unique player, run three unique players. Doesn't really matter. But what I'm looking for is a couple of unique players to kind of spread those lineups out a little bit. If I wanted to, I could play with the randomization slider and kind of mix it up even a little bit more. But I'm wanting to see who the optimizer is pulling most often. Who is it locking in? The person or the players in the highest percentage of lineups are the ones the optimizers are going to like. And generally speaking, across the industry, they're going to be the players with the most value and the most projected points. Some of these guys are definitely going to be pulled in because of price. Some of these guys are going to be pulled in because they're just studs. And then we can go through and quickly narrow down our player pool this way. I already ran it ahead of time for those 100 lineups, and just to show you what I'm looking at here, MVP and flex positions, all usage, Derek Carr, Joe Flacco. Is it a shock that in a showdown both quarterbacks are in your lineup, both running backs are in lineups, and then a couple of wide receivers, Tyrell probably to make it all work, Emmanuel Sanders maybe as an alternate, but you're going to see that the dominant features up here in the 50, 60, 70, 80% ownership range, or not ownership, but exposure range in the optimal lineup are the core plays that you should probably be running according to the optimizer. And then it starts to fade off pretty quick. We're not even down to 10 guys, and we've already blown through both kickers, and now we're down into your more suspect type of plays. That's okay. That's how this works. And a showdown, it probably works with a high success rate. I haven't tried it myself yet, so I can't say yes or no. But what I can do is I can run over to DraftKings. I can kick on to NFL. I can use last week's main slate because these are still up and running in our classic game series, our classic format. And once this slate loads, say that 5 times fast, slate loads, we can scroll down and we can run 100 lineups here. It may take a little bit. We may poke around a little bit while we're waiting on this to fill up. But if I do 100 lineups, not 3,100, 100. I just want percentages. I'm going to run down to server mode and make it even faster. I'm going to use 2 uniques. Let's use 3. Let's see what happens if we use 3. Max players against the defense. I don't care. Let's see what it does. This is a main slate. You shouldn't really be running anybody against your defense anyway, but we'll see if the optimizer suggests that we should. If we were on a prime time slate, a 2-game slate, that's probably more what we would do. Randomization, not going to mess with it, not going to mess with the flex, not going to mess with any stacking rules or anything. We're just going to click optimize. Whoopsie. Let's scroll down to the bottom of the list, find a couple of turds that shouldn't be in anything anyway. We'll just hate those guys. Those will be the 2 that we use. Thanks for that rule, DraftKings. It didn't really do crap. But while we're running these lineups, it takes a little while. Even on server mode, here it goes. Now it's kicking in. So I can run to, say, the winning lineups page, and I can see that we've got players winning every single day. It's pretty darn cool. There's a multi-entry that won 500 bucks. This one was pretty cool. Yahoo. There was a ton of overlay on Yahoo yesterday, guys. And with the notes and the coaching staff, we turned about $5 into 600 bucks here. I know it's only a little $12 win here, but Betos is excited because it's his highest GPP score probably in his career, and that's awesome because he was watching the coach's notes. Keg here won about $6,000. It's one of our lead coaches. There's just a lot of winning. Was winning 150 bucks. There's just a lot of winning going on week in and week out inside DFSArmy.com. It's just the way we are. It's the way we run through our coaching channels and what we end up preaching to everybody with the coach's notes here in the NFL section. We're at what, 35 lineups? Let's go ahead and let's look for maybe some showdown notes tonight. See if those are up. They'd be under coach's notes. There's last week's notes, primetime tiers, early afternoon, geek primetime, Pittsburgh, New England showdown, Pittsburgh, New England single game. Scroll over a touch more. And it doesn't look like the slates are up for tonight just yet in terms of the showdowns. But check back a little bit later, and they probably will be. We're at 60 lineups. I wish it would go ahead and show. It used to show those lineups as they built out. You know what we could do? We could run over to Vegas Insider really fast. We can go to their NFL odds. And we can start looking for defenses this week. So if I'm looking at week 2, that would be, what, the 12th? That's Thursday night. Probably won't be on the slate, but the game's on the 15th, the earlies and the lates. Let's start looking for home. Not necessarily home favorites, I'm sorry. For defenses, we're looking for big spreads and weak implied team totals. So this is what, 22 each minus 1.5 is about 20 points. That's not really all that great. 47, not a big spread, not a big spread. There's a big spread right there. Baltimore and Arizona. How ugly is that? A Baltimore chalk Ravens defense week again. Because you're going to have, show you how you do this mathematically for those of you that are new and haven't necessarily keyed in on what we do. We'd take 41 points, 41.5 technically, divide it by 2. You got 20.75 implied points for each side. Now we're going to take away 13.5 or half of 13.5, which is actually 6 3/4. So subtract 6 3/4. 14 implied points for Arizona. 14. They're an early time zone. They're west, traveling east. They were a debacle last night or yesterday for the most part. They didn't look like they're going to be a too powerful offense. We know Baltimore's a good defense, and we know what Lamar Jackson just did. I don't know if he's going to do that again, but he has a high floor. He has a high floor being at home and being favored. And with the other team implied to score only 14 points, you got yourself a chalky defensive week when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens next week. New England and Miami, that's 47 points, right? 47 divided by 2 is 23.5. 14.5 point spread. Take away 7.25. And 16 points implied for Miami. New England's going to be a chalky defense even on the road. Washington versus Dallas. Dallas is a big favorite, so I take 22. That's the 44 divided by 2. 22, and I subtract off 3.5. And I'm at 18.5. So Dallas's defense is in play. Jacksonville doesn't have an over-under on it yet. Seattle and Pittsburgh. See, I'm looking for the spread. It's not going to be a big enough spread at that high of a total to really mess with anything. Another one. Still waiting on more lines to come out. But in terms of today, it looks like these are your two offenses right now are going to be Baltimore and New England. Pretty simple. And at home favored with a high implied team total. Mark Edwards is probably a thing again next week. If you want to use him as a cheaper tight end, it's probably going to pan out for you. Domination Station again. Are we at our 100 lineups? We are at our 100 lineups. So over 100 lineups, 48 players used. I would go position by position here. And I would say Carson Wentz at 81% is a core play. Did he have a good day? Looks like that worked. If I go over to running back, Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, maybe down here even to the 40-30% range, Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. Were 3 of those 4 great? Looks like it works, doesn't it? Go to wide receivers, probably a volatile position, probably a little bit sketchier, but look at this. 96% Curtis Samuel, who got, 5-6 points. D.D. Westbrook, who scored a touchdown in 60% of lineups. Keenan Allen scored a touchdown, 41% of lineups. Adam Thielen, scored a touchdown 20% of your lineups. So if you just stick to the top 4 or 5 guys on this list and make this is a core list that you can start to build around. If we look at the tight ends, Kelsey, Kittle, Hunter Henry. Duh. Ingram's even in there, 13% of lineups, but it was more on Kelsey and Kittle. Defenses, Buccaneers, interesting. Now, it's going to be a little more random with these optimizers. They're not like me and you. They're not looking mathematically for ways to do this. They're actually just saying, take a cheap one and, YOLO. That's why you saw some Miami on FanDuel and some weird stuff. Now, Seahawks were okay. Buccaneers, it turned out 49ers were better. Bengals, probably not. Chiefs give up a ton of points, but so the defenses, I would pick the way I just showed you. I'd go through the spreads, I'd stick to the defenses that we know are likely to produce, and then I would try to fit this core around it the best that I could. And this core, of course, Curtis Samuel. Wide receivers, I can take or leave. I'm going to lean towards them and I'm going to look at it, but I'm really watching quarterbacks and running backs. Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Carson Wentz, maybe a D.D. Westbrook because he was cheap, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Austin Eckler, Thielen, and now you're down to the Chubbs and Johnsons. So when the industry is touting up your Johnsons and your Chubbs and all that good stuff, and that's fine. Chubb was in a good spot last night. Didn't work out. Actually had a vultured touchdown taken from him, which would have helped him get closer to hitting value. So the situation was about to produce. It's just that he got vultured on the goal line and didn't produce. And then the game script went the other way, of course, and it took him completely out of the game, which we knew could happen. We wondered if it could happen to Leonard Fournette because Leonard Fournette was also one of those non-pass catching backs that was supposed to maybe be more incorporated into the passing game, and it didn't really work out that way yesterday, to be honest with you. But now we know. We get a little bit of data. We see that maybe preseason's a little bit full of shit, which shouldn't surprise anybody, and we just move on. Week 1, we got a little bit more information. What I will tell you about week 2, watch for week 1 stuff to flip on its head. We saw a lot of passing out of Dak. We saw a lot of passing out of Lamar Jackson. Wouldn't surprise me in the least if they didn't pass hardly at all next week. And Philadelphia, who did some passing, went more towards the run or whatever. These are the kinds of things that happen. Now, I know it sounds like a bunch of BS, but I've noticed through the past 4 or 5 years that week 1 and week 2 are often opposite. You look at somebody and you say, oh, they're a passing team. And oh, it looked like they were going to do some passing. And then next week they run. And you're like, where did that come from? After I piled on and jumped on the wagon and all of a sudden now you're running? What the heck? Same thing happens where you see the passing game. They're supposed to be a passing offense, and then in week 1 they open up and they don't pass at all, and you're like, oh my God, we were lied to. Guess what they do in week 2? They go back to their normal colors and they start passing. So week 2 is usually good for bounce backs, like a Curtis Samuel type. Week 2 is usually good for running teams to kind of show their identity and still want to go to the run if they didn't get game flowed out. But it can be one of those weeks where you've got to watch that matchup, and if the other team is exploitable to the pass, a running team might go to the pass, or a passing team might lean on the run a little bit more. That's where you need the coaching. That's where you need the advice. That's where you need DFSArmy.com, because we're going to start hashing that stuff out over the next 2 or 3 days. And we're going to get in here, and we're going to dissect it in our coaching notes and our coaching forum conversations that you need to be a part of if you want to take this to the next level. I'm showing you little bits, little tips and tricks and little bits here and there that are going to show you how to use the tools, that are going to show you how to use some of the advice, that are going to show you that we know what we're talking about. But you're the one that needs to come in here and put everything down on paper, and you need to make the decisions. I mean, yesterday on FanDuel, just to give you full disclosure, I lost money. I lost 25% of my budget towards, I only built one lineup. I did throw one in a GPP, but I built one lineup, ran it across a ton of cash, and I got back 75% of my investment, which wasn't great, obviously, but considering that I had Jameis Winston and Nick Chubb as my quarterback and my running back, it was a miracle that I got anything back at all. That shows you how high floor works, and it shows you how playing those cash games is still a viable situation. Now, over on DraftKings is different. It was a very easy double up, a little more than double my money over there, because instead of running, oh, I'm going to run Jameis Winston on both sides because he's going to have it. No, 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 no. I don't typically go all in on a player. I was all in on Dalvin Cook. I don't typically go all in, though, on players. They can get hurt. Weird stuff can happen. And so over on DraftKings, I went with Carson Wentz and Christian McCaffrey, and was able to make some lineups work there using largely the same players like your Dalvin Cooks and whatever else. But that was just how I got a little bit different in my lineup. My core was still very similar, but I used those different cash lineups, the different cash quarterbacks, and it made a big, big difference. Christian McCaffrey and Wentz had good days, and I more than doubled up my money there, whereas I lost a little bit of money on FanDuel. But that's stuff that we talk about inside those coaching forums. DFSArmy.com. Obviously, consider the coupon code CHOP, CHOP, when you jump in here and start turning your game around. If you had a bad week, we'd love to talk to you and maybe see if we can't get you off to a little bit better start in week 2 here, because the first 3 or 4 weeks are generally what we're looking at. We're not looking at week 1 individually or week 2 individually. We don't worry or sweat anything until about week 3 or 4. And we need to get a little bit of sample size on some of these numbers to see if our ideas are working and panning out. But we've got the coaching in place. We've got the players in place to help you become part of the community and build better lineups. If you like this type of stuff, of course, as always, like and subscribe to the video down below. Comment in the comments section, probably comment back. And of course, turn your notifications on so these videos drop to your phone the minute they drop, because I don't really have a set schedule. I'm going to try and do them daily here for the first 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of the NFL season, and then we're going to see where we go from there. But until then, we'll see you guys on the inside at DFSArmy.com. I'm Choppadong, and I'm out of here, boys. We'll see you tomorrow.